Welcome to the Distiller. I'm Brandon Dawson, and we're recording live today from the Brew House at 1047 East McMillan, corner of McMillan and Park Avenue in Cincinnati's Walnut Hills neighborhood. If you've never been to this place, this is one of Cincinnati's great places in my mind. Perfect neighborhood place, quintessential kind of neighborhood watering hole. Owner Laura Davis took this long-standing, if people lived here in Cincinnati for a long time, they know the Brew House, but what Laura's done with it over the last few years has been amazing. There's Walnut Hills Redevelopment Foundation meetings here, trivia nights, live music. The food is really good, has gotten great over the last month or so. So we're happy to be here. Thanks to Laura. My guests today are RIC HORDINSKI and David Wilcox. Rich is a founding member of the band Over the Rhine, the creative force behind the band Monk, a touring and studio musician and engineer, currently the owner of the Monastery, a beautiful recording studio and performance space here in Cincinnati, and a member of the teaching faculty at the University of Cincinnati College of Conservatory of Music. David Wilcox is an award-winning folk songwriter, singer and songwriter, known for his intricate, insightful lyricism and virtuoso musicianship. A journeyman songwriter. He's got 18 albums to his name, the most recent of which is Blaze, available on Amazon or directly from davidwilcox.com. First of all, thanks, guys, for coming.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. To set the stage a little bit, here's what I see you guys having in common. You both have what I sort of see as a workman-like sort of journeyman approach to your craft and to your career, a willingness over time to flex and adapt, not necessarily dependent on the traditional music industry structure, whatever that even means anymore, and a strong sort of vein of commitment to quality in the kind of Robert Pirsig Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance sense through everything that you do. I'm interested, it's kind of a last minute thing to be able to talk to both of you together, which works out really well because you have had, how long have you been working together? How long have you guys known each other?
I would guess 93.
Yeah, over 20 years probably.
Okay.
Something like, yeah, probably 94, 95, something like that.
Okay.
And working together, mostly recording, performing live, writing together? Is it a creative relationship in that way?
We've done all that.
Yeah.
We've toured.
You toured together?
Yeah.
A few times, yeah.
Okay. And it seems to be something that, it's gone on that long, it seems to be something that works for both of you very well. What do you think at the heart of it, like, why do you guys get along so well?
I think the last time I was headed towards Rich's house and I called him up, he answered the phone. He said, "Hey, brother." And that really sort of said it for me. That was so kind of you to say that because I have felt like I'm inspired by you. I trust you. I know you. I feel like you got my back in so many ways. And I just feel like when I see the things that you do, it just seems to me like a strong manifestation of who you are, and it just feels good.
Oh,
See
that's
you
so
do
sweet.
what you do.
Thanks. Well, I think I remember the first time we met was at Canal Street. You remember that?
In Dayton?
Yeah, in Dayton. Dave was playing a show. Did I open the show? I think I did.
I think so.
I did. And I had some kind of promotional material, and I had a picture of my Volkswagen,
The interior.
my Beetle, the interior of my Volkswagen. And Dave looked at it for a second and said, "Oh, 67." For like 1 second, and I didn't even. He was like, I was like, "How can you tell?" Well, this, and I still don't even know. But he was like on it, and we were like, "Well, we should talk."
We should talk.
We should spend a little time together.
Yeah. And I think it wasn't too long after that we sort of started recording a little bit in my basement.
Yeah.
I made a few trips to Asheville, but it's interesting how Dave's the kind of guy that you like coming in contact with Dave and working with Dave. Like it definitely bent the trajectory of my life.
Wow.
In I think a beautiful way. Like Karen and I talked about this. My wife Karen and I talked about this a couple times. Like your whole approach to like life and food and just thinking about the way you interact and stuff. Like it it has that, and I think your shows do this too, that they without being pretentious in a like woo-woo kind of way or whatever, just kind of your gift is to get people to think about things differently, you know, and I reflect on that at times.
Yeah.
And it's been, you know, I'm grateful for it.
I remember when you told me that over the phone, probably 8 years ago or more, that you were grateful for the way that, for working together, for the adventures that we have had. And somehow I think you were brave enough to say that it had an influence on your life that was good. And I'm moved by that. It's fascinating to me, because I still carry a lot of old assumptions about the way I was, not very socially aware at all. Music to me was a way to know my heart, and at first it was the only way. And, you know, like somebody would ask me a question and I'd say, well, I have a song about that. Can I play you a song? And they'd say, can you talk? I'd say, no, I'm sorry, I can't.
That might be another reason why we get along. We're sort of socially awkward twins or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but there's
there's the lake effect.
The lake effect. So we didn't know this at the time, but we grew up like, I don't know, a couple miles apart.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
literally,
seriously?
yeah.
in Cleveland.
Northeast Ohio, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
Dave grew up in Menor, which is like where I still have an uncle. My grandparents lived there.
Oh, that's funny.
Like right where Dave's from, yeah.
And there seems to be something else which, I don't know that I was thinking about it in these terms, but your answer to the first question, I mean, the willingness to go right to the heart of it, which comes out in your music, especially in the industry that you guys are in. There's this fear of earnestness, of being not ironic enough, of being a little too sincere. And that strikes me as something that neither of you guys are really concerned about, that you're willing to just put it out there and talk about real stuff instead of having to appear to be whatever.
That's what brings me the best memories, when the conversation gets real. That's what draws a friendship together. And so I try to do that in every part of my life. But it's true that music was the place where I first knew what it felt like to do that. Because there's a sort of a time-lapse bravery of writing a song that you can deliver in 3 minutes, and it seems, oh my God, you're so brave. Well, it's 3 days worth of bravery condensed into one.
Right.
And it's also, people
one
don't,
strong shot.
and people don't realize that it's also aspirational too. Like,
Right.
you can live into the song on some level. You can try to live up to the song.
Yeah.
And not even your own songs, but other people's songs as well. But I think it's interesting because I think I came at this whole writing thing coming from that sort of, I'll use the word messed up religious background. And so there was an assumption that you would only write about things that were really, really, really important, as in having eternal significance or whatever.
Right.
But the disconnect was always that you talked about it in this weird, impersonal, sort of negative way. But I think for me it took a little bit of detox from that. But I think I kind of tried to hold on to the, like, let's just talk about important stuff on some level. So I think even in the studio, when someone brings in a song and it's just dopey, there's a little part of me that, like, I don't even know how to deal with it sometimes, you know?
Kind of what is this about?
Yeah, like, really? We're going to spend time talking about that? But I don't know.
Yeah. We say that this podcast is, the tagline for the podcast is the podcast about the soul of work, or the search for meaningful work, or the search for meaning in the work that you do. To what degree is what you guys do, because you've both been doing what you do for a good bit of time now, how do you think about it in terms of work? Do you think about it that way? Do you separate parts of what you do into, this is this is chopping wood and carrying water, and this part of it is inspiration, and this part is fun. How does that word apply to what you do?
It's changed over time for me. When I get up at 5 to go catch a plane, I feel this weird kind of like thrill, like, oh my goodness, I'm a grown-up. I have this feeling like there's something honorable in like having a mission. And I take off into the world with this sense of everything is instilled with the joy that I get from music. And I mean every little thing, like the way I set up my guitar and the way I craft the sound and the songs, and even the way I know that a creative person has to stay inspired because output equals input. So my job is to live a life that's inspiring. So everything gets instilled with a kind of a purpose. And that has not always been the case. There were times when I looked at work as, geez, I'm getting loaned all this money by this record company. They're trusting me to sell some records. Maybe I should listen to them. They know what they're doing. And maybe I should put these cover tunes on my record. And I was aware of like playing that game. That made me crazy. So I sort of changed the rules. And it's weird. I set up my own little goal in the middle of the field, sort of at a diagonal. And the audience is wondering, well, why is he running that way? But the game that I play is I have a practice. Let's call it a backdoor spiritual practice. I show up at this quiet room to an empty page, and I say, what do I need to be thinking about? And I'm asking. My perception is I'm asking the guitar for a song. But another way to say it is I'm asking my heart, what do I need to know before it's too late? What do you know that I don't? And in the quiet, I wait, and I get a little kind of musical idea or a phrase or something, and I follow it. I trust it. I trust that the reason why it moves me is because it's coming from a place that I want to go somehow. And it's my guidance, it's my teacher. And so that is how I define the work. It's the writing shows me a place I haven't got to yet, like an emotional snapshot, and beckons me there. And then the performing holds me accountable to this audacious promise of a life that feels full and real and like home. And so the combination of those two things, it just feels like I can show up for work feeling tired and in a bad state. I play a few songs, and little by little I start to remember who I am. And to me, that is really great work.
That's fun because it's a way. When I've been thinking about the podcast and these conversations, I've been thinking about work in the sense of swinging the hammer, whatever that means. There's also the sense culturally of the work in terms of doing the internal work. Have you done the internal work to show up informed for what you need to accomplish? And the way that you connected those two ideas is interesting for me because, you know, we're talking to a bunch of different people for this show, and not all of the work that people do would be considered by them or by somebody else to be creative work. But it still requires, in some sense, that in order to be intentional about it, in order to bring yourself fully to it, that you're at some level, no matter how conscious, doing the work internally to bring yourself to it. I love that you kind of connect in those dots.
Yeah.
What do you think about that for you and how you work?
It's interesting. I think what I noticed over the years is it's not a new idea, and it's kind of trendy right now to talk about just showing up. You know, you got to show up, you got to do the work. But I do notice that if I show up and do the work, that the inspiration will come, and it's not, and it's, you know, it's tricky in my, you know, my sort of adopted life practice. whatever you want to call it. Hesitate to use the word Zen or whatever, but the idea that you make it a practice, and if you only, I don't know how to say it, but if you only do it short term, you can't see the peaks and the troughs, and you can't work through it. And so I'm probably not saying this clearly, but now that I've done it for a while, I kind of have the big picture, and it's a little easier to be like, yeah, this is a slow time, but I just keep working, and then eventually, and it's never really the thing with me anyway. Most of the time, it's never the thing that I think it's going to be when I'm writing. Like, I'll start with this idea, and it's almost never that idea that I wind up with in the end. And hopefully it's good. But I think it's not a new idea, and I love there's a great interview with Philip Glass where he's standing by the sink and this guy's interviewing him, and the guy says, so, you've had this long career, and, what's your secret? And he sort of stops and looks at him and says, my secret? You want to know my secret? Get up early and work hard all day. That's my secret, And I think the older I get, the more I learn that the inspiration, you do develop, hopefully, a sensitivity to whatever it is that inspires you. I mean, I think I got from Dave this ability to listen to your intuition, because there was a time when I probably thought that it came from some supernatural place. And I think that when that faded for me, I sort of lost my interest in intuition. And interesting, only like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I started to get this idea that, and again, from this like meditation place, that like when you get that feeling like something's going on, like probably subconsciously, and really like 5 or 6 years ago, I started to be able to understand, this is really geeky, but like understanding complex chords and being able to hear them, not because I could spell out 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 9, but because I knew that it made me feel a certain way. And I had been feeling it all along, but I hadn't been able to put words on it. And so like, to me, like now when I hear a 4 chord, it's like, oh, that's that level of tension. Yeah. And so that's the 4 chord. And if it's a different level of tension, if it's ever so slightly more, then it's the minor 4 chord. I mean, and I can hear it in a physical level too. Like I do have that musical thing, but it really became being aware of how that made me feel and how a minor 7 flat 5 chord makes me feel and where it wants to go. And it's on an intuitive level. And it's also, it's more complicated than that, but that's where it came from. Was I started feeling like, oh, that makes me feel that way. And that's the G, Oh,
that's so fun.
Yeah, isn't it interesting?
And that's the gift of time.
Yeah, true.
Really getting...
But I wish I had recognized that feeling, that I could understand it by the feeling it gave me 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody the other day. The thing is, I think we have some language or openness to these ideas in creative pursuits, whether we get there or not. Nobody's going to be surprised to hear you say that necessarily. But in other stuff that we do, that we value in different ways, culturally, like business and like less creative pursuits, we don't claim to value those things. There's a business writer guy named Peter Senge that I've read a few of his books, and there's one in particular called Presence, that is his investigation with 3 other people of this phenomenon that they witnessed in business processes where they just couldn't get through something or find a solution. And then something would happen, and the idea would break open, and the solution would kind of present itself, and nobody could really take credit for it, and nobody knew where it came from. And in their conversations, what they recognize is that the times that they saw it repeated, trying to encapsulate a bunch of stuff here, what seemed to be the secret to the recipe for allowing that to happen was a critical mass of people in a meeting having essentially a level of spiritual awareness that they could allow something to happen that they didn't have to be responsible for. And talking in some way about exactly what you're talking about being willing to let something happen on an intuitive level. But I'm just interested in the fact that, like, as we approach work as an idea in so-called creative pursuits, I tend to think that everything is creative in some level if you bring yourself to it properly. Sure. We're open to that idea, but not in other things. And I think that's why we get to the place, I guess I'm on a soapbox now, that's why we get to a place with business and culture where there's so little soul in it. and we look exclusively to the arts for the things that would fulfill us instead of looking for our work to fulfill that piece of us in a greater way. But this is my axe to grind and why I wanted to do this podcast. How has that changed for both of you over the years? I think you both hit at some level that it has changed for you, but like, how did you approach that differently, specifically, either of you, when you were younger, and on a real practical level about how you bring yourself to it every day? How is that different now?
Well, I think it's probably more complicated than you could put into a short sentence. But when I was 14 and first wanting to play guitar, I'm sure it was wanting to be engaged with music. It was more about my social awkwardness, or wanting to meet girls, or wanting to be cool, or idolizing certain musicians, and then that sort of takes you to a certain point. It's like if you've been married for a while, you recognize the usefulness of different phases of your marriage, and that there's certainly this initial incredible drive, which is primarily chemical.
Yeah.
And I think that I sort of see my music life as that. Like in the beginning, it was very driven by my own deficiencies and need for love and all that. I joke with my class that I didn't spend most of my life flying around the world so that strangers could tell me how awesome I am because I'm healthy, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, hopefully, if you stay with it, you fall in love with the music on some level, and the desire to kind of get, for me anyway, the desire to like see how much of this thing I can understand and hopefully contribute to in some tiny, tiny way to move that needle ever so slightly. And to do that, that's where the bloody mindedness of work has to come in. You just do it and do it and do it. Does that answering your question at all?
Yeah, I think so. I think the marriage metaphor about there being different seasons and different levels of maturity absolutely speaks to that. It's not always, the sort of parallel question is how much of that process is intentional? Like, is it something you guided and you saw happening, or is it something that you only see in the rearview mirror? And I think it's different for different people.
It looks different in the rearview mirror, even though it's intentional as you do it. I think it's different. It looks different in hindsight.
Yeah.
But what do you think, David?
And I had to smile when I was talking to a singer-songwriter, and she was saying that the real reason why people choose to be singer-songwriters is because it is so difficult to fling your soul out to a bunch of strangers and feel some people get it and most people reject it. And the reason why that's a valid choice for a life is because what you get to practice is not trying to sell people on what you do. What you get to practice is digging a deeper well to know who you are that would not be required if you had a job that was something predictable, something sort of, like if you sell gasoline, if your gasoline's good, people buy it and there's no questions asked about is it better than any other kind of gasoline. They don't even see it. So the fascinating part about putting yourself in a vulnerable position to be criticized for your very personality, for your very essence, is a wise choice if you take it as intentional instead of it being an obstacle, instead of, boy, if I could only get everyone to like me. That's not the point. The point is, how can I...
Wait, that's not the point.
I've been doing it wrong.
Can we rewind?
So this woman was saying that the real beauty of the choice is that this side effect of strengthening your sense of worth apart from what other people think of you it gets exercised most of all. It's sort of like if you went into the weight room and you said, well, I'm here to move weights, where do you want them? And they say, no, they just go up and down. You don't really move them anywhere. Really? Well, why are we doing this? Well, you don't change the weights change you. So I love that about the difficulty of music, you know. And so that to me is the real payoff. That's the part you keep. The fact that it is humbling. It's a very humbling craft, and it grows you in a way that is hard to get in areas that you can keep a sort of mechanical expertise.
So the other side of that is what you both do to some degree requires an audience. I mean, you could still be doing the same thing, but maybe you would be able to do it and maybe you wouldn't if there weren't people coming to the shows, if there weren't people buying the records. Certainly in the time that I've been around the music industry, you know, those words have taken on a completely different meaning.
Music industry?
Whatever it is anymore.
Is there still a music
Can I tell a
industry?
10-second joke?
Yeah, go for it.
The new theme song of the music industry goes like this. Are you ready? There's no business.
Yeah. No, but that's the thing is, there are several questions in here that I want to know. One is your personal relationship to whatever that was and whatever it isn't anymore. I think the question I'm most interested in is how has constantly rubbing up against that monster, or choosing not to rub up against that monster and do your own thing, but still find a way to continue to be able to do it, affected or changed what you do and who you are and how you approach it?
Oh, a good question.
I could go.
Go
You
ahead.
wanna?
Go ahead.
There is a fascinating part of me that does want to play by the rules and sort of win the game. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And what's confounding to me is that what I really want out of music is for it to continue to surprise me and to continue to inspire me to go for the juicy life, you know? And so the contradiction in looking outside for what I want to do, like what does the industry want, versus looking inside for what I want to do, like what's going to nurture my soul. I think I have never trusted that sort of the path of trying to please the industry. I just saw that, you know, like if you look at the ad revenue that radio stations used to make, I was talking to a radio programmer years ago about like how he understood what gets played on the radio. He said, follow the money. If you look at ad revenue for radio stations, it's mostly from beer. So if your songs sell beer, you're on the radio. And he looked at me with a big smile and he said, David, your songs don't sell beer, do they? You don't like beer, do you?
Interesting.
I've got the formula wrong.
The beer formula. Yeah. It's moving so quickly. I don't know that I have an ongoing debate with a friend of mine in England, Steve Lawson, who's a brilliant bass player and sort of like, I think he's kind of the new model, the new whatever it is, entrepreneur, you know, and he does shows and he does lessons online and he makes lots of recordings, which is kind of, I think, one of the new models. He probably puts out a record every 10 months or something maybe. And when I say puts out a record, I don't think he actually makes records anymore. I think he just puts it out on Bandcamp or whatever. And by being really vigilant, I think he supports himself and his family. And he's a lovely, wonderful person. And it's hard to see right now. I think the hills are big. And when you're at the top of them, you see a certain thing. And when you're at the bottom of them, you see something else. They're definitely, I won't lie to you, as the young people say. there are parts of the new thing that are somewhat soul crushing. The fact that in the new models, you have to constantly tell people how good you are. And you used to be able to hire that out.
Yeah, the label's not going to pay for that anymore.
Which felt more civilized on some level. And I always joke with people and say in my next life, I will have a career where I don't have to constantly tell you how great I am, because it's horrible. And that's, to me, it's one of the trade-offs of the new model or whatever. But having, for someone like me, it's a diversification is good. I might be working on I might be scoring a documentary for PBS, or I might be producing a record for someone in the studio, or writing something for somebody, scoring a string part for a client in Seattle or something like.
Yeah.
But I don't have. I think part of doing this for a while is I think I've found a sort of balance between, being fairly serious about the work, not trying not to take myself too seriously, but not being too romantic about it. Like I don't, when I was younger, I certainly felt like there was a hierarchy, and those of us who were in the arts were somehow doing something lofty, and I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like it is lofty, but it's not any loftier than the guy who's fixing my pipes, or my car or whatever. And so I try to think of it that way. Like I try to be workmanlike about it. I don't know.
Well, and I know it was one of the things sort of prepping. I was listing what I could see about the ways that you guys, everybody that I know, it's not just music, it's all creative fields that's making it work, is doing 1,000 things. Has some kind of side hustle, if you want to call it that, or 1,000. They're all side hustles, and there is no central thing. For you, I know you're doing the studio production stuff. You're doing your own work and playing shows. You've toured with other people. You're teaching at CCM. What am I leaving out? You're scoring.
Yeah. I don't want to sound whiny about that. Like, I'm super grateful to have that kind of work. And honestly, I'm a better writer. I'm a better teacher. The teaching makes me a better producer. It all works together.
Right.
I'm grateful for the influence of all that. And in this world that I live in, I'm grateful to make a living doing it. And I rarely do stuff that I'm not excited about.
Right on.
That's a total gift.
Yeah, it's a good thing to say. I know for you, I was thinking about sort of the Sam Phillips record club model that she did a couple of years ago, and different things. Even looking on your website, there's different things that you're doing, like the Wilcox weekends and the custom songs. And I don't know if all of those are what an industry person would consider profit generators, or if they're just different ways for you to communicate in a more direct format what you're trying to say. But how do you think about that whole question?
I also find things that feel fun and feel like they have a lesson for me. And I love the way they complement each other as well. And lately I'm doing speaking stuff and these like walking tours in Ireland where there's music and storytelling. And then the custom songs are a fascinating thing. Using the skills I've been crafted over the years to know my own heart, I use those same skills to tell someone else's story, and that can be cathartic and powerful and reframe a difficult time for them. And that just sort of came when one person requested it. And then I just put a notice up on my website saying, hey, this happened. And then other people have requested it, and now I've done it more than 30 times where I've crafted a song for somebody that is very specific to them and what they've been through and how they can find their way out of it. And it's been a real honor to, for the sake of the music, get real honest with them. It's really, really fun.
But it sounds to me like for you, that's not so much sitting in the office jotting down different ways to hustle it. It's something that like has emerged organically for you, that as long as you're following what's happening, these different things emerge.
Yeah.
How do you guys think about the concept, and I don't mean this in terms of musicianship or technical facility, about the concept of mastery and how it relates to what you do? Is it something, is it a factor at all? Is it a word that you pursue?
Yeah, definitely. I think the microcosm of music has lessons for me, and my goal was to learn how to harmonize my life, but I didn't know how to do that. So I start with learning the subtle decisions that go into making one song work, and I learned those lessons. But I think the reason why music showed up in my life in the first place was it was like my two little dowsing sticks. It was just something that I could see, that was in my hands, that could tell me about something that I couldn't see. And I have always felt like the best way that I will know that I've been successful at music is if I can be as present and as open in the rest of my life, so that I don't feel like I need my little wooden interpreter in my lap anymore. I don't need the guitar to speak for me. I can feel just as good about what I say as what I sing. That's what I want. And music has given me that little by little over the years.
But it sounds to me like it's less about, again, chords, technical facility, than it is about music giving you a language for mastery of other elements of your life, giving you entree
But you
into...
have to get it right in the microcosm first. You have to learn the lessons
Without the work.
in the specific.
Right. That's good.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know I mean, I feel like, I came to music, not music, but the guitar anyway, like pretty late in life. Like I was probably 14 or 15 before I touched the guitar. But it was a huge, I remember I was playing drums in like the school band in junior high, and they had an electric guitar in the cabinet behind, like with 2 strings on it or whatever. And I was so obsessed with it. I dreamed about it every night for several nights. And I was the kid who, like, I took an acoustic guitar and I took apart a telephone and put the telephone microphone in the sound hole because I wanted an electric guitar. Like, I was obsessed. Great. And so when I was, 15, 16, like, I would play 4 or 5, 6 hours a day to the point that I almost didn't get out of high school. And, I had to go see a counselor. Like, I was pretty, so it was all bound up together. So but starting late, like, I still feel like I have, on a just a musical technical level, I have so much still to learn. Like that's kind of the nice thing about choosing this versus motorcycle maintenance, which would be fascinating too. But like you really can't get to the bottom of it. And it's not even that you can't get to the bottom of it. You can't get to the top of it, I mean, we were sitting in the studio today. I learned this new little thing, and it's like amazing. And it's not nothing that people haven't been doing for 100 years, but you can only get so much. Yeah. And it's all there. And I still get a charge out of learning that little gospel turnaround today. Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
That's fun. And it's fun, it's just fun for me. Like, you've been doing this for however many years, and one little turnaround. Oh yeah. Feels like you unlocked some, some other level, which is great. It's one of 1,000. Yeah. So hopefully I can learn 5 of them. So, thinking again a little bit, just about the concept of work and how you bring yourselves to this every day. I'm interested in hearing from both of you just what your day is. When you, and I know there are 1,000 different versions of your day. One is the 5 o'clock flight to a different city. One is the writing day. But walk me through the average day and how you bring yourself to it and what it looks like for you.
Well, I think one of the blessings that I've had has been that the diversity of what I do has made me not really get too tired of it. But like depending on what's going on, if I'm on the road, then it's, getting up and remembering what city you're in and figuring out breakfast and what you're going to do and what time the doors are and all that. And that's one thing. And that, for me, at this point in my life, that happens in chunks. So I think for David, it's a little different. But like when I was out with like Daniel Martin Moore or whatever, a couple of years back, like that was a 6-week chunk and a break and a 6-week chunk. So that has its own kind of beauty. And, looking back on it, I realized how incredibly damaging it can be if you have the wrong personality. Like when I was touring with, early on, like it's just such an incredibly selfish lifestyle if you let it be, I'll eat when I want to eat, I'll sleep when I want to sleep, I'll do this. And I think for me, it was not positive on a personality level.
And it can be rough for the people at home if you've got people back home who are expecting you to be involved in their lives, being gone 100, 200 days a year.
I know. I mean, it's funny now that I've been home for a few years, Karen and I will talk about stuff and she'll be like, oh yeah, you just weren't here for the first 10 years, which is, complicated. But when I'm here, I could be in the studio starting at 7 and tracking until 4 or 5 in the afternoon, or working at night, or I could be at the university for 4 or 5 hours lecturing.
Yep.
So it's a lot of diversity.
And you're doing lessons. The other day I stopped by the studio.
I do. I
8
teach a
o'clock
hand.
in the
I started
morning,
teaching lessons about a year ago.
Yeah,
which is really fun. Really fun. I forgot how much I like it. It's a fine line between having students that are awesome and having too many students. For me, on my personality level, anyway. But I love teaching. It's weird because we have this thing that we spend our lives learning about, and just the arc of the music industry has meant that, like, I know so many things that are completely irrelevant. So many beautiful, subtle things I've learned about how to record and how to arrange a song and how to think about where strings come in and how to think about the groove and the secondary groove and how the bass and the kick drum interact. I know all this stuff, and
But irrelevant how?
Well,
irrelevant in the sense that you don't get to use it every day, or that it is actually obsolete to what you do now?
It's not obsolete, and I think it's very spiritual. Like the way the kick drum and the bass interact. Oh my God, that's more important than all the preachers that ever lived. But it's a very esoteric. There's a very small amount of usage for that in the world as it is now. So teaching gives me a little bit of window to, like, here, have this, and if you find it valuable, keep that fire lit, and pass it on to somebody else.
Passing on the
in the music. Oh yeah, I know. So that's teaching really, on a like makes me happy level. The idea that the way I understand the way your fingers touch the strings matters. If I can pass it on to a couple people, that makes me happy.
That's fun. I mean, as a guitar player myself, not anywhere near the level that you guys are, when you have those little breakthroughs, when you realize that the little tiny thing makes so much difference, and when you realize, like, you've played a lot with Phil Keaggy, that I can't understand I literally cannot conceptualize the way that he thinks about the instrument. I just can't bridge the gap.
I know. I think on my tombstone it should say, Rich Hordinsky, musical director for Phil Keaggy. The irony and awesomeness of that would be,
But the best things for me as a player over the years have been the little tiny meaningless moments that don't make any observable difference in my playing to anyone else, that I'm like, oh, it's that little thing. He's paying attention to that. That thing that I didn't even recognize was a thing, he's paying attention to it every second.
That's the mastery, right?
That little bit of capacity that you develop in your way to conceptualize something. Yeah, mastery. Those are the breakthroughs that I feel like I didn't even recognize that was what I was shooting for until I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
What about you, going back to, like, what are your, maybe not the road day.
A day?
Yeah, what are your, again, the chop wood carry water days look like for you?
My favorite moment is I'm in the middle of a performance and I'm 3/4 of the way through a song, and I'm thinking about the arc of the story that's happened so far tonight. I'm remembering things that people have really connected with and the feeling that I'm getting in my heart. And I'm scanning all different possibilities of what song to play next. And I don't need to think about my left hand or my right hand or my voice or the lyric. That all is deep in my being. So that's happening. And what I'm thinking about is where to go from here. And then I get this little hunch, like I can change the last few words of the song to anticipate where we're going to get to the next song, to start to frame the story. There are spontaneous things that happen where somebody will call out and I'll go with it. I'll trust their idea, and the night becomes really unique. At the end of the night, I pack up my gear and I'm driving, and I'm very much like concentrating on be safe, don't drive too long, get sleep, and I love the discipline of all those thousands of little decisions. Mm-hmm. I love getting home. I love the fixing stuff. I just love to fix stuff around the house. I love cooking for friends and neighbors. There's stuff that happens at our house about 5 nights a week, all these different groups that come and they meet at our house. And it's inspiring to have that kind of challenge, to be learning new ways of thinking. And so a really satisfying day for me includes some kind of exercise, getting on the bicycle or just running, and some kind of new thing, some kind of, whether it's what I'm reading or a movie or some gathering that I'm learning something new, and then some practice with the instrument. And I'm doing voice lessons now. I got another voice teacher that gives me a whole new set of things to think about. And so, and of course, I'm never able to spend the time that each thing deserves. I can't be as good a partner as I want. I can't be as good a parent as I want. I can't be as good a guitar player as I want. But I have to balance all these demands and somehow make my peace with the fact that I'm not as good at anything as I want to be, as I could be. And yet, what is the thing that I'm doing? It's not just being good at these individual things. What I'm making here is this complementary balance of a lot of things that you have to keep them all in motion and keep them all alive in your life. And so, to me, the satisfying day is the day that includes a lot of each thing and still has the rest side in balance. I'm still getting to sleep when I should sleep and getting up when I should get up. And I still have time to feel like I have energy for creativity. So it's really the whole balance that, oh God, balance, Daniel-san.
The thing that makes that for me more than, some meaningless Zen saying is having watched both of you perform, having watched both of you in your element, seeing you actually do it. The last time I've seen both of you on stage a number of times in different settings, but the last time I saw you, David, was probably a year or two ago, and it wasn't at one of your shows. It was, and I'm going to get the names wrong because I was a guest of friends outside of Asheville. There's the writers' camp and commune, 30 minutes or so outside of Asheville, and there's a yearly gathering that...
Singing Alive, is that the one?
I don't know.
Swannanoa, maybe?
It's not a festival. It's more like a family and friends
probably that
thing.
Yeah.
And there was a zip line, and there were a bunch of people there.
Oh, that was Rockmont. That was
that
was the the birthday party, the celebration for Lynn and Steve. Yeah.
Yes, and I was there with family. Jake Wolf, I don't know if you know Jake, he's a bass player in the Asheville area, is connected to all those folks. And we were up there, and you were inside the lodge with what I guess was a thrown together group of people just doing Motown covers, and you were playing bass. With more joy than I've just about ever seen anybody play. Like just kind of
the irony of Dave playing bass.
Am I right about that? Am I remembering this correctly?
Well, I did
the
learn
6-string bass or something?
I did learn an interesting factoid, and that is that the Sly and the Family Stone song "Everyday People" only has one note on the bass.
Is that true? Does it stay all the way through?
It's one note.
It's all
like
rhythm.
a Talking Heads song. Wow, I did not know that.
But the thing was the joy of, because you do your thing, and generally when you do your thing at your shows, it's a focused thing with a particular energy. This was you as sideman, for a whole other thing that was happening. And you were just soaking it up. I was sitting on a folding chair over in the corner. Kids were dancing in the middle, and it was great joy and just openness to the experience, which spoke to me as much as anything I've ever seen either of you do. Just the ability to bring yourself with an innocence to that experience that didn't have to be about the thing that you've honed yourself to do for forever.
Right. Some of my favorite musical experiences have been out of my element, like a drum circle.
Right.
Oh man. Yeah.
Well, it's good. All of it is good. I really appreciate you guys being willing to take the time and share your
fun
experiences and bring a little work. I know that we need to wrap up. So thank you, Rich Hordinski, David Wilcox. Thank you both so much for taking the time, but just bringing yourself fully to it. It's been great.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. This episode of the Distiller Podcast was recorded live at the Brew House, 1047 East McMillan Street in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thanks again to Rich Hordinski and David Wilcox for appearing on the show. Visit the episode page at thedistillerpodcast.com for links to both Rich and David's music and more information about Rich's Monastery Studio in Walnut Hills. Special thanks to Laura Davis, owner of the Brew House, for welcoming us in. Stop by the Brew House, see what we mean. It really is everything great about a neighborhood bar, and the fish and chips are fantastic. The Distiller is produced, recorded, and hosted by me, Brandon Dawson, with co-production and booking from Terry Heist. Mixing by Justin Golden. Our logo was designed by Scott Ryan. Download episodes, find links and info, including photos of the guests and locations, and get in touch with us at thedistillerpodcast.com. You can suggest people you think should be on The Distiller to talk about their search for meaningful work, or if you think there's somewhere interesting we should record the show or something interesting we should drink while doing it. It's all at thedistillerpodcast.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, thanks for listening.